We'll call the meeting in order. Please rise and join me for the pledge of the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Speaking of justice, there he is.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for finally getting this meeting together. I think we've tried for several months to try to put this together, and I know that vacations are there and schedules are busy, and so it's great that we're going to have this. I think it's always good to review our goals, our successes, and the opportunities that we have as we look to the coming year. I think what I like is that we're all looking forward and trying to do things better for our students, and that's ultimately what we're all after. So I'm not going to say much, except I'd like to have action for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of this afternoon's agenda signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll start with Dr. Funk.
Thank you, Ken. First off, I'd like to commend all of the administration that's here today. We've had a lot of work over the summer getting ready for school, and they've done a nice job over the last week of really preparing this information for you. And really, we're going to kind of recap some of the things from last year and kind of give you an overview of some of the changes that are impacting our district from a legislative angle, and just some things that are new to the district this year. So I'll start out and then kind of cover last year a little bit, some proposed goals for this year, and then I'll turn it over to Afton. And I've asked Afton to come talk about athletics and the relationship in the community, and then she'll be leaving afterwards, but everyone else will be staying around. So you can welcome to stay too if you want, Afton, but I think you've got things at the high school you probably want to do. So with that, I will try to move on to the next slide, here we go. So once again, there's the agenda that you just approved. Real quick, how do I get rid of that floater? Want to go back a slide, Ashley? There we go. So just a little bit for the board's purposes, some of you may have seen this at the beginning of the school year. Here is our district. This was a snapshot taken sometime last year. I think our special education numbers are a little bit different at this point in time, but as you can see, about 7% of our population, and that's pretty consistent with where we've been, where English is not their primary language in the home. We're closer, I think, right now to almost 20% special education. You see we're still right around 50% for free and reduced, and we had 24 homeless students last year. I think we're starting the year with 13. Is that correct? From 9 different families? Yep. So just to give you an idea of where we're at demographically there. Here's our student count, and the two numbers that are changing most quickly in this district are the Asian numbers there, where we have 6% of our students are now Asian background. I would say 4 or 5 years ago that was less than 1%, and our white population continues to decrease as some of our minority populations increase. And so with the influx of particularly Korean students within the district, we are starting to be challenged a little bit more in the realm of English language learners and staffing for that. And Mary Jo, we were having a conversation the other day. I think you told me that at Lakeview and Sibley. Go ahead and tell the board about the Korean population.
For the first time ever at Lakeview and Sibley, we now have more Korean students than Hispanic students. So the demographics are definitely changing in some of the buildings.
How does that change your
Well, EL, you know, I haven't done the count in the last 5 years of our change in FTEs and EL, but it has increased, EL teachers. Staffing, we've increased, which we'll be talking about later, the Achievement and Integration Grant. We have more success coaches. You know, 5 years ago, we had 0 Corinne success coaches. Now we have 5. So that would be a change. What else am I missing with?
Here's the district's pathways document. It was brought to our attention, and it's been modified up here, but we did not have, for some reason, early childhood special education on there as far as working with our kids prior to kindergarten. So the goals are pretty consistent there. We want 70% of our students prepared for kindergarten from their kindergarten readiness programs throughout our community, and then really that's working with our community partners there. 80% is really the target for proficiency in the district, and our student target for growth is 90%. Not today, but in October, I'm going to have John Double come and speak to the board about the student pathways and the different planning. We'll touch a little bit upon that today, but he'll give you a more detailed report on what he's working on with that coming up in October. Just to recap, here's our aims as a district. Our values, we went through this process last year: respect, integrity, compassion, and collaboration. Here were the goals from last year. One, lead the district through a values identification process, which we completed. Coach building leaders to implement staff decision-making at the site level to better meet the needs of our staff and students. We'll talk a little bit about that. Increase growth and proficiency at every grade level in the district. We've had mixed successes there. Maintain the board fund balance at 14%. We have. And then collaborate with community members to come up with a strategy to improve the antiquated Hammer complex, and we were successful at that. So just running through some of our successes. Once again, there's the values discussion we completed. We implemented ALICE training throughout the district with district staff being trained on it. We touched briefly on it with the students in the buildings last year. We're going to be doing full-scale implementation of that this school year. We had a national expert come in last January, February. I think he got frozen out in January to meet with the PLC leaders. He came back at the beginning of the school year this year. We had the community support of Hammer Field in the Halverson gym, so that's moving forward. For our kids really going on to the four-year colleges, we added an ACT prep course to the high school curriculum, which was taught both third and fourth quarter last year. We were able to implement laptops one-to-one throughout the district, 6 through 12. You can see our grad rate has surpassed 80%, high school's at 90%, and we are moving in the right direction with both of those. We maintain the fund balance. Mary Jo will briefly touch on the elementary counselors during her portion here. And then most recent success, when we went out to finance the bond rates for the facilities plan, they came in $738,000 less than estimated. So that's saving our taxpayers money, which is a positive. Some opportunities to improve. Again, high school, are we really meeting the needs of our students? And we'll touch base more on that here in a minute. We have a significant opt-out rate, hugely. Kathy, you were telling me the numbers. Want to just briefly tell the board where we're at as far as the MCAs at the high school?
At the high school, we have between 10th and 11th grade, over 400 opt-outs. So 56% and just under 50%. So as we start talking about the new rating, the North Star rating, those students who choose not to take the test either through parent refusal or student refusal are then counted against us in one of the new ratings. So they give us no points since we don't have a score. So really our district-wide data and our high school data in the new rating are certainly skewed as a result.
So,
No, 10th grade and 11th grade, 2 grade levels.
and for an example, in Austin, what % of their students take the test?
Most of the Big Nine are over 90%. They're surprised at our,
So this,
with 50, I'll pull the percentages up for sure, but
if 50, about 50%?
56%, I believe, in 11th grade, and just under 50% in 10th grade. Opt-out. It's technically called parent refusal or student refusal.
So that skews,
They don't have to give a reason, but I'll talk a little bit about, especially in the 11th grade, the impact of other assessments.
K-5 Fidelity, our students receiving a similar level of instruction throughout the district. I think that we're making some gains and strides in the right direction in this area. Mary Jo will probably have a chance to talk about that a little bit. We're going to continue to work on developing partnerships within the community, be it Riverland or local industry, in preparation for potential pathways implementation in 2020. Instructional coaches, are we consistent in our approach to improving teaching? Are we following specific protocols? The effectiveness of PLCs by grade level and department, we have some that are more effective than others. How do we get everybody to be consistently effective within their PLCs? The mental health needs of our students, it's K-12, but we're looking particularly K-5 at this point with the addition of the 4 elementary counselors. And then growth and proficiency are inconsistent throughout the district. And we'll ask you to make sure the board gets the copies of these slides as well. So here, we met the other day as an administration and kind of went through these, and here are some proposed goals. And I mean, this is just a discussion point at this point, but increase growth and proficiency at every grade level in the district on standardized tests over 17-18, and we've added through focused instruction and quality professional development. Everything we do should be focused on how we can improve the learning of our students. Continue to maintain our fund balance at 14%, continue to increase our district graduation rate. And these next two are really what we're looking at for this Pathways program that I've been talking about, is through the Chamber Business Ed Committee, develop partnerships between the community and the school district that leads to increased student opportunities in the workforce. So that's kind of an external discussions with industry and the Chamber and Riverland. And then internally, what I'd like to see is develop plans to create distinct student pathways for high school students starting in 2020. We have more like, and Neil, you were up there, something similar to the academy model that we saw up in Alexandria. And we'll be providing the board more information on that in October here. But really start looking at meeting the needs of our students and tying them to the needs of our community. And then the last proposal that we have up here is our activities department will partner with local organizations to develop strong programs in each sport, youth through the varsity, and then we're going to explore expanding junior high sports in 2019 and 20 with the additional space we will have from the completion of the facilities project. So just thoughts initially from the board on these. I know this is the first time you saw these. We could use ACT data as a potential. And really where I would like to go is I'd like the state to say, you know what? We're asking school districts to give the ACT test. That will be our method of record and measurement, as opposed to the MCA in 11th grade, where the kids are like, this test means nothing to me. I'm focused on going to school or someplace after high school. Why do I care about taking this test? And that's what parents are hearing.
I-
The measurement of that has to be consistent with, I think, your overall approach to education. We somehow need to make our students wildly enthusiastic about whatever device we have in place. And obviously, right now, they're not.
So I have a question. When you're not using your microphone, is there something that's picking it up then for the recording? Or do we need to make sure we use our microphone? Okay.
You need to convince me to be wildly enthusiastic about microphones.
Looks like it's on. Yeah, okay.
Or the bigger gym and in the Halverson and stuff, but I'm happy for the last one, you know, to have some more youth sports programming. I think families want that from what I heard, so I'm glad that we're exploring that and looking for that. So I think people will be happy with that.
Any other comments about the goals that are presented before us?
I would like to see something building upon the values. We decided on some values last year, but now I like to build on them, perhaps specifically with integrity and respect this year. So I would like to see, as we discuss further along, maybe something on that area. I believe that was lacking.
Yeah, I'd second Jill's suggestion there too. Wasn't that long ago, we had a mission statement which involved three things: thinking, achieving, and caring. And I think that caring part should perhaps be somehow incorporated into our current approach, because caring is a wide area. It would include caring about performing well on whatever assessments that we have, and all sorts of other issues like integrity and moral standards.
The fund balance, I'm okay with maintaining it at 14%, but if I just want it to be known that, like, if we get to the end of the year and we're not sure we're going to get this grant or that grant, and we might dip a little bit below that, I think I would definitely like us to consider, you know what I mean? If we're not sure we're going to get it, we can keep a teacher, keep that teacher, and then if the odd chance we don't get the grant, then we might dip a little bit below that. I'm definitely okay with that. I would like to have a discussion if that happens. I think our grants are a little bit more stable, and I'm excited about that. But just in case, like, I would definitely like a discussion about that and to look at that again.
Okay, thank you for letting me come and present today. I think it's a great opportunity to hit on some things that really haven't been touched on, especially in my years here. I was just going to tell you to go to the next slide, but I can do that. Okay, this is not sliding very well. So I think this is a great thing for you as a board to be able to see. I don't know if you've seen this list, but being able to just recognize and really be proud of the things that we're able to offer our student athletes and for activities as well. So you can just take a look here too, and I'm hoping that Ashley will be able to share my slideshow with you guys as well, so you can take a closer look. But this is just something to run through the list of all of those opportunities that we have. Obviously, we have our athletics that we have for each of the seasons, but I think even more impressive is to look at our fine arts and our clubs and our activities that are also being offered. We know sometimes that athletics tend to overwhelm our activities department, but we are very proud of the things that we can offer on the activities and fine arts side of things as well. One thing that we did differently this year was we offered our 8th grade incoming students during their Link Crew orientation an activity fair. So we reached out to all of our coaches, our advisors, our leaders for our clubs, and we said, you know what, this is a great opportunity for you guys to get information about your activity out there. I think this is something that we've maybe not done so well in the past, and I'm really looking forward to what this will bring in the future and expanding that even more. We had great success. Our 8th graders were allowed 20 minutes to go around the gymnasium and visit each of our tables for our different clubs, our organizations, our sports. And they loved it. And I know that we had a lot of coaches, advisors that said this was a great opportunity to just get our activity out there and to know about it. They were able to pick up some names and do a little recruiting too, because we do know that as long as we are getting it out there, our students have that better opportunity to be engaged and experience what we want them to experience out of our high school activities. With that said, is that we think it's also very important that we do this not only for our 8th graders, but for our 9th through 12th graders. We have new kids coming in, and this isn't something that we've done in the past. So we are looking at expanding that activities fair and putting something more on during our orientation days when they come and do their pictures and their schedule pickups is what we can offer to our clubs and our activities during that time to, again, just promote their activities to the rest of our student body. This is something I also wanted to share too. This is our athletic head coaching's list, and I thought it was, when I created the list, but I also then, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to put down what their level of years that they've had with us are. I thought it was very interesting once I kind of had to do some research on some of them. As you will see, we have only 3 coaches that are on staff right now that have been with us for 9 or more years. We have one that's been with 4 years, and the rest of them are 3 or less years that they've been a head coach. They may have had experience as a coach in different districts prior to this. Many of them are starting their head coaching careers, however, in our district. So I think this was just valuable information for us to see and for me to, internalize and say, it's a great opportunity for us too. It's a great starting point that we're going to be able to mentor and to grow and develop our coaches together. And that's why it's just been so important that we've established our head coaches monthly meetings because we know that there are so many coaches that are new and they're inexperienced and they have a lot of things that they have to offer, but they also are there to learn and to take things from other coaches. So it's been a great opportunity that we are going to continue to feed on as we establish our coaching staff and gather our experiences and our years going forward. So I just wanted to share with you, on the top here, this is just for our fall 2018 athletic registrations. We are just starting to open our activity registrations right now, so we don't have numbers for those. The 454 actually is probably a little low right now. We have had some additional ones that are not included in that number. But I kind of laid out just all of our athletic programs, the numbers that we're seeing with registrations. We are standing pretty similar to what last year was. We may be down just a little bit in numbers for those who are registering for programs, but really looking that we have been even probably about the last 3 years. We're sitting somewhat comparable. On the bottom, you'll see just our total athletic registrations for 2017, 2018. We had just over, 1,000 participants. The unduplicated means that, obviously we will have students participating in more than one sport. And I did include there, too, that we do recognize our 3-sport athletes with a special certificate at the end of their spring season to recognize them. And we did have 51 of those students who did participate in 3 different sports for us. Also looking at our total fine art and activity registrations for 2017 and 18. Just looking at it, you may say, wow, that is kind of low. One thing to recognize, though, these are just fee-required registrations for fine arts and activities. So these are going to be speech team, mock trial, robotics, our fall play, our spring play. Many of our clubs and activities are not fee-based, and so we do not include those in our registration counts. But again, we have, very good numbers for participation in all those fine arts in those fee-based activities as well. I touched on earlier just our monthly head coaches meetings, and this is something that we've really focused on, especially because we look at the experience of our head coaches that are on staff right now. This has served as a very valuable tool to our head coaches. I know that, as we wrapped up last year, and that was our first full year of having our meetings, we had very positive feedback. The group felt that it was just a great support group for them, somewhere that they can go and know that they'll be able to have some discussions on things that they have experienced, and be able to get very truthful reactions from the rest of us. So this has been a great introduction to these head coaches meetings for us. I just listed some of the agenda topics that were kind of our big topics of discussion throughout this past year. Obviously, we have wrapped up the chemical eligibility code. We're also very much focusing on program handbooks. We have a shared Googled folder for all of us coaches that we're sharing our handbooks. We're seeing what are other people doing. We want to be consistent, and that is the big thing we're focusing on is the consistency that we have from program to program, because we do want our students and our parents and our families to be able to see that and recognize that when they jump from fall to spring to winter, whatever that may be, is that they're going to be hearing a very consistent message from our coaches and from myself. We're also focusing on our student athlete academic achievement. We have been working with our administration at the high school to really focus on how our coaches can be a part of making sure that academic achievement is taking place, and how are we helping our students who are struggling in the classroom. We want to make sure that comes first and foremost because they are student athletes, and so how can we involve our coaches more because they are eager and they're willing to make sure that classroom work is being done first. And so we are working with administration to make sure that our coaches are a part of that solution, and whether that be holding study sessions within their season, anything that they can do to make sure that they're providing those opportunities academically first for their sports. We also are obviously looking at attendance, making sure that, again, attendance in both school and sport, are being treated equally from program to program. Like Dr. Funk mentioned earlier, we are having discussions on our youth programs and our booster club relationships with our head coaches. What does that look like? What role are we wanting to see our head coaches play in those programs from the youth level to the high school level? Throughout these coaches meetings, we are focusing on our Minnesota State High School League Inside Out cohort, which is a curriculum-based activity that I've been able to participate in with the State High School League that really focuses on making ourselves better so that we can make others better, and focusing on that leadership aspect and how can we make sure that we're providing what we need to ourselves, because we do know that we need to make sure that we're carrying that out to our students that we're working with. Our student leadership is becoming very important to us. This is something that hasn't been real active within the school, and not necessarily a captainship, because we know that we really don't want to focus on just captains as our leaders. All of our students have a leadership role, and we really want to focus on that. And just because someone is not named a captain of a sport, their role as a leader is so important. And so it's giving our student athletes those tools on how to become a better leader. We ask that of them, but yet we're maybe not giving them exactly what they need. And so this is our way of being able to provide our students with those tools of becoming a good leader. And then also just our Tiger Pride. We're really focusing on what we can do to make sure that that school spirit and that Tiger pride from our students, from our staff, from our community, is going in that right direction. And we know that will always be a work in progress. Yeah.
Relative to student athletic academic achievement, I remember long ago when I was involved, both as a teacher and as coach, we had a grade book called Edline, I think, and since then we've retired that and got another one. But I had the ability to go into Edline and I could monitor the progress of every wrestler on the team.
Yep.
And that was really useful. I think that ability was vacant, it was missing for a while. Is that possible again? It's really handy for the head coach to be able to go to their computer and just bring up how someone's doing in their English class or their chemistry class or whatever.
Right, yeah, and a lot has actually came back, and both on the academic achievement and the attendance, our coaches are getting reports, and so every day at 2:15, our coaches do get attendance reports for our students, but they're also seeing reports come to them when they have students on their roster that are dropping below a certain percentage. They will be notified, and so then that coach is going to be aware of, you know what, I need to make sure I'm having more conversations with that student because I'm starting to see that, you know, maybe it's because of our season is kicking off and it's getting into the grind, but we need to make sure that we're refocusing. So our coaches are definitely finding more access to that student information for their academics so they can stay on top of it. We're still working a little bit with, it's called Synergy, which is the system that we're utilizing right now. There are some different routes that we have to take to make sure that we can have those coaches accessing a little bit more work, but we're definitely, it's been a work in progress. Jeff Halverson, the assistant principal at the high school, has been great with working with our coaches to make sure that they are getting that access, and because we know that that is extremely important, and our coaches aren't going to be abusing that. They're actually going to be using that to make sure that we're providing those best opportunities for our students. So
I like to have the ability to check up on the usual suspects, you know,
Right.
without having to wait for a notification, because a lot of times that's too late. You know, really was handy if I could just bring up somebody's record.
Right, yep, and we're still working on that aspect of it, but we're going in the right direction with working with the people at Synergy.
What's that percentage that they drop below, 70%, 50%?
I think the percentage that they have actually right now is going to be a grade level of a C or below. So if a student is achieving a C or below, they're going to be getting that notification report. I just wanted to share this with you. This is what our head coaches group has established with the participation of our student leaders. So we have met 2 times now with our large group, so that includes our coaches and our student leaders, to establish this document, which is what we call Tiger Pride. And this is the document that we really want to see the consistency from program to program. We know that each program is going to have a little different angle that they go, but ultimately it comes down to this will be the base of what we are looking for for our students to be ambassadors and focusing in all different avenues. And so we really touched on these 5, which is going to be the classroom, in practice, in game, in our community, and then we know that in this time and age, we have to make sure that we're touching on social media. So these are the things that we've established. I know looking at them, it's going to be like, you know, that's expected. Of course, we're going to be respectful, but this is what we have to build off of. This is where our coaches are then going to dig deep within their individual program, and they're going to talk about specifically what does it mean to be respectful in the classroom. So our document is very, very broad, but this is where the opportunity comes for our coaching staffs to really work with our students and to say, all right, for our program, what are we going to aim for? What is it going to look like for us to be respectful in the classroom? Or how are we going to be careful when we're using social media? So this is just a great opportunity for our coaches to really get to know and to become vulnerable with their program specifically, but yet know that that consistency and the main theme and the purpose behind it is going to go from program to program. So just to kind of finish up here, really, again, another aim for us is our community relationships. And we know that this is an area that there's always room for improvement. Of course, that we've talked about our Hammer facilities, our project user group meetings that we do actually have one coming up tonight. But this has been that collaboration between not only our coaching staff, but also those user groups who are going to be a part and directly impacted by the facilities that we have coming to Hammer. So this has been great for us. Again, this has helped with our communication that we have between all three of these groups. Going next into the high school collaboration with booster clubs and youth associations. This is where we're focusing on what is the role of our head coaches in these programs from the youth level up to the varsity level, and how are we doing, and how, where are things at. All booster clubs and youth associations do run very differently from group to group, and so this is an opportunity for our head coaches to make sure that they're collaborating with other head coaches, getting tools and tricks of, how are we communicating, how are we building that relationship with them, because ultimately we know that it's so important that our youth programs are established in a purposeful manner, because we want to see that purpose being carried on up through the high school, or the middle school and the high school avenues for those programs. And then, like Dr. Funk mentioned, the continued discussion on expanding junior high athletics, looking and aiming at what programs are going to be needing this the most, looking at what other Big 9 schools are providing. Where are we going to be able to fit these programs in, and adding those junior high athletics? Because we are hearing that our booster clubs and our youth associations, they need this collaboration with us. They want to see this partnership so that we can provide these opportunities for our students to have that higher achievement level when they get up to that high school program. And I just shared here our purpose and value that we are really touching on within our Minnesota State High School League Inside Out cohort, is that just looking at all of those who are involved in this process, and it's all of us. It's our school board, our superintendent, our principal, our activities director, our coaches, our student athletes, our parents, and our community. And we know that it's a large group, but yet when we all work together, great things can be achieved, and we're seeing that. And so we thank you for the support that you're providing us as we work through things. We know that there's potential for a lot of growth, but there are great things that are happening too that we want to make sure that we're not forgetting to celebrate. So I appreciate being able to provide some of this information that I probably haven't been able to touch on in the past, but I think it's valuable that you are aware of the things that are going on, and we're working through at the high school level with our activities department.
Thank you, Afton. I'm glad to see that we're looking more at junior high athletics with the addition of the Halverson gym. I think that's one of the big things that came out of the community when we went through that process last fall on the referendum. And also definitely like to see that collaboration with the community and the booster clubs. So thank you for that. Any questions or comments for Afton?
Afton, we just saw the cultural breakout in the district. How does that translate to athletics and fine arts?
I think that our students are very fortunate right now. We have the program, which are the Tiger Funds, that are allowing our students who may not have that opportunity because of financial reasons to participate. We don't see that. We have something that comes up. We have a coach that comes in and says, I have someone who wants to play, but there's a barrier there, whether it's financial, and it's been great because we can full-heartedly say that's not a problem, and those funds are so much appreciated that we're able to use at great lengths. I think that also we're finding language barriers, and of course we have online registration, which can be a little bit difficult because of the access. We have a computer that's right in our office. My administrative secretary has been wonderful in assisting those families. We also use our success coaches in that sense. And so really, I think we've been able to tackle those obstacles that we've faced with that influx of, those minority groups. It has been wonderful to see their participation and not having any roadblocks that have been put in place.
We'll see what we can do to get you the demographic breakdown of that. I'm not sure how we track that, but we'll see what we can do to find that information out.
Thank you. And then for the fee-required activities, how does that work with supplementing for certain students if needed?
Can you explain that a little bit further?
Free and reduced. Are there any?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yep. So all of our athletics and our activities and fine arts, we basically have 3 separate tiers. And so we have a regular fee, we have a free fee, and we have a reduced fee. And so again, any students though who are struggling with still providing those funds, if they qualify for free or reduced lunch, they do also qualify to have approval for the Tiger funds.
Okay, thank you. And that also pertains to those specific activities that we mentioned before?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Afton, does that Tiger Fund come from the Education Foundation?
Correct.
Okay, and it, we're pretty fortunate to have the Education Foundation that has, with alumni, that has put together some substantial funds that allow students to participate, and that's been going on for quite some time.
Just a couple things, Afton. You'd had started earlier the 3-sport athletes at 51. Do you remember what they were last year?
You know what, I didn't pull those records. I want to say that they're probably pretty
same.
similar, just because our registrations are staying about the same. I can provide that information going back, though, for sure, but I know I just pulled just this last year's.
Sure. No, that's good. I was trying to remember back when my kids are doing that too. We didn't see numbers, but it's nice to see that because it's
Right.
great to encourage that. And then also the AAA awards when they throw the academics and activities at it. A couple other things. As far as the head coach involvement in junior high sports, just a thought. Since we don't have a college in this town, in my mind, every sport, the head coach at the high school is the terminal coach within our city. And it would be really nice to see them highly involved, not just setting up a program and saying, well, go get them, boys, go get them, girls. Because I think that's what's happened. I know that happened in our tackle football, which we are way too many years overdue in that. And I think we're seeing that probably the production that we've seen a little bit out of that. So hopefully that gets going soon. But I hope they can understand that. It's not just something that during their season when they're getting paid, okay, then I'm into it, and then it comes the off season. Because I had an experience this year in talking about one of the programs, and, well, we'll wait till next year when we can raise more funds. And I said, that's really not acceptable. That's just taking another year off, which is the same thing. I'd just like to comment on the junior athletics. Let's not just talk about it. And I mean, this goes to all of us. Let's get it going as soon as we can. Because it not only came out in the community meetings, it's not your deal. I'm just as a suggestion because we've waited again too long. We've bruised our participation and then we bruised our performance because we have laid back for a long time and just not as many kids are involved. And again, you know, academically, the more involved you are, the better you generally do in the classroom because you are focused. So just a couple thoughts as you meet with the coaches. It'd be fun to, you know, just see them have that urgency to get it going because I think we need it. Thanks.
Just curiosity, what's the definition between a club and an activity? Is that state, and what's that mean?
Yep. So basically, our clubs are going to be those that there's no financial needs from those groups. It is just like-minded individuals who have an interest. We have. I'm just trying to think of, you know, some of the ones that we're gathering. They have like interest astronomy. Ken Fiskus has a love for astronomy, and he is willing to donate his time. There is no stipend for his position. He gathers a group of like-minded students who have that same interest. So those are our clubs. Our clubs function on their own. They have an advisor that's within the school, usually a teacher, who will be their supervisor and really just kind of guide them in their meetings. And then our activities are going to be those who usually the advisor or the coach is receiving a stipend. Some of them will have a competition involved. So let's say chess club. That's deceiving. Chess is actually a part of a competition group for us. So they truly are an activity, even though it's just kind of been it's a chess club. But our clubs are just, again, more so like minds getting together, gathering and talking about things. But our activities are actually going to be maybe public performances, competitions, and those such. Speech, mock trial, robotics, those are going to be our activities. Yep. Yes, yep, we do. And many of those activities are not actually governed or sanctioned by the State High School League, but we as a district are requiring those same things from our students, both academically and then just eligibility-wise.
We've got a fishing club that's kind of growing quite a bit in our community.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody ever came to you about the target shooting club or any of these? I see it over at some of the smaller schools, and I didn't know if it'd come up at Elberly.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. That is actually that's been added to our activities for this school year. We're very excited to have that on. Right now, it actually is going to start by functioning as a club through the school to make sure that we have the interest to be able to move forward with it. I don't see a problem with it because I know that the advisor that we have that's going to be in charge of it, his name is Jeff Laskowski. He does work for the city in the fire department. He is going to be leading that group, and I know that he already has between 40 and 50 students involved. So that's going to be a great addition for us because we know that our community, that is an activity that our students are involved in. Other programs such as fishing and things like that definitely have interests that are coming, and we would love to be able to work with them. How we place them, though, whether they're an activity or a club, really is going to be kind of dictated by the Minnesota State High School League and what they are governing as activities. Fishing is not part of the State High School League right now. Robotics and clay target have came into the State High School League. And they're recognized by the State High School League, but they're actually not being sponsored by the State High School League. So it's a little bit different on how we treat those. But we're also obviously all wanting to bring in activities that our students are involved in different activities, because we know that not all kids are going to be involved in sports or fine arts, but by bringing in things like fishing or clay target, whatever it may be, we're expanding their opportunities that they have for those experiences in high school.
Okay, I want to stay on time here, so if it's okay, I'm going to move on to our budget overview. Thank you, Afton.
Okay, I just updated some data that we kind of looked at last year, and this is year 2 of the funding formula set by the legislature. And again, we have a 2% increase in the basic formula for the gen ed revenue, which is very important. Like voluntary pre-K, we continue to receive that award. It was automatically graced in as we were initial district that was awarded for that, so we get continued funding for that. Comped Pilot, similar thing there. They now put that permanently into the formula. They rolled it right into the compensatory calculation of compensatory revenue, which is part of the gen ed formula. And then a little update on the ag credit. Ag credit is a new, relatively new, came into play last fall for the first time, and it's a credit that helps out farmers for ag property. And for our district, listed here is how ag credit will come into play. Ag credit is applied by the county auditor treasurer. So once we approve our levy, this is a credit above and beyond what our levy total is. So it won't be reflective in our totals when I bring the levy to the board this fall, but it will be applied at the county auditor treasurer level. So for example, in the Pay 19 this fall's levy, $146,000 is the ag credit. Will go up a little bit the next year, $177,000, and then it'll come into full play in Pay 21. And the reason for that is ag credit does not apply towards OPEB bond payments. So once the OPEB bond payments have dropped off the debt schedule, then ag credit increases up to the full $392,000. And so just to give an explanation on how that will be coming along in the future years. And then regarding long-term facility maintenance.
Just talk me through that a second. Go back a slide, will you, Ashley? So $392,000 credit in 21. So we certify our levy. It goes to the taxpayers that here is the projected levy for whatever it is, increase, decrease, stays flat for the school district. Then after that goes out, then they apply the credit. And so then if you're a ag owner, your tax bill would go down.
So I believe how this works, based on the explanation I received, is that, like, for example, what we approve for our levy, that goes to the county auditor. And then before they issue the truth and taxation
Okay,
notices,
they'll
that ag
apply
credit
that.
is applied
Okay,
before that notice is developed.
okay.
So then, Lori, basically, if I owe $10,000 and I'm a farmer, and I get part of the ag credit is $1,800, then I'm gonna go ahead, and then my tax bill then, when it's approved, would be $8,200 instead of $10,000.
In your truth and taxation
In my-
notice will show
yeah.
that credit already applied.
Yep, that'd be
Yep.
applied in there.
That's
Okay.
my understanding. Yep.
So I have a
Just-
quick question. Are we on? So then this money, this isn't above and beyond what we already had. This is the kind of compensate us and the farm, people who own property don't have to pay quite as much. And then this is the money to make sure that we get what we need, but that they don't get taxed a whole bunch, right? Kind of?
So in the end, we get our full revenue. So what happens here with ag credit is, those property owners that own ag property, they're gonna get this credit applied to their tax bill. But we get the funding in the form of state aid. It's called ag credit to us, so we do not lose out on any of our revenues.
So what it amounts to is the local farmer is providing that $392,000 to the state.
That is correct. Yep, that's how that works.
Do we know what the breakout is to the local farmer, like how much per acre or how that breaks?
I wouldn't have that level of detail. I could probably circle back and provide some kind of a percentage, but I don't have that off the top of my head. All right, so then LTFM. Just to summarize where we're at with our LTFM, so for the 18-19 budget, the total funding available, which is the state aid and levy, comes to almost 1.3 million of total funding available to fund the projects that we're going to do for improvements to our facilities. Now, of that 1,299,000, that already takes into account the under levy that the board took action on of 142,000 that we lowered the levy by that amount. So that 1.299 reflects that net. So that is the total amount we have available for our projects this year. And just as a side note, as you may certainly be aware of, that majority of that funding for 18-19 is used for that Halverson Elementary roof project.
All right, I'm up next. So this is the audience participation portion.
We reviewed these slides yesterday. This was not in the slideshow.
It's just a table setter. I'm not going to take a lot of time on it, but there's numbers on the left and descriptors on the right. And I'm going to go over each of these quickly, but just a way to get us thinking about some of the things I'm going to talk about here. So if you look at those, the number of employees, new teachers, kind of give you an idea of the extent of the employee numbers that we have, and then lead into staffing and how that relates to talking about the teacher shortage. So next slide. So last year, Lori issued 942 W-2s. That's a lot of people. That's why I didn't ask you. 942 W-2s. That's a lot of W-2s the business office is processing. Of that, we would say about 550 people are regular employees. So they're a member of a bargaining unit. They are here most days of the year, at least 9 or 10 months. So that we have about 550. Of that, 305 are licensed teaching staff. And this year we had 40 new teachers to the district that were hired. So it gives you an idea of the total number of licensed staff and the new teachers that were hired this year.
So I have a question on that. Is that normal?
That is usually, I would say, high 20s to mid to upper 30s. So we're kind of in that range. That would be right around there. I think last year was 35, maybe. Kathy, Mary Jo, help me out. 34, something like that. So, yeah. No, that's just members of the ALEA bargaining unit. So, that's going to also include nurses, psychologists, those other folks that are ancillary services that are members of the bargaining unit as well. One of the big issues that we have, obviously, in the nation and to a fair amount in Minnesota is a shortage of qualified teachers. 10, 15 years ago, if we had an elementary opening, probably when I started, we would have upwards of 70, 75 applications. And now we'll probably have 20 to 30, something like that, maybe more, depends upon the position. And of that, by the time you call maybe the 5 that you think you want to interview, 2 of them are already taking a job. And that's probably the area with the most number of qualified applicants. There's other areas that are really short. SPED and speech and language pathologists are 2 all over the country, and for us specifically, that we have the hardest time finding qualified applicants. Oftentimes they're on a variance or a different tiered license, as I'll talk about in a minute. Those are probably the biggest areas. Almost all areas are much shorter than it used to be. It's definitely a teacher's market right now, and that might be why you see some of the movement that you do. People can be pickier, and they can, if they want to get in a certain area geographically, they can pretty much do that. It's about attracting and keeping people that want to be here. 21 was an average number of students in an elementary classroom, and here's another thing that might go along with when you talk about teacher shortage. The number of industrial arts preparatory colleges in the state of Minnesota is 1. St. Cloud State is the only college left that teaches CTE industrial tech teachers. And I think 2 years ago they put out 6 graduates. So that gives you an idea when we talk about STEM and CTE and some of that, you have to get more creative in how you fill those positions, maybe with ag teachers, with people that have other kinds of CTE licenses to fill those, because that's one that's really, really hard to fill. And we're lucky because we have people that want to be here that are ag or industrial tech licensed, and we're okay. But other places, they cannot fill them. I saw a statistic of how many went unfilled last year in the state of Minnesota, and it was a lot.
Jim, how do you reconcile that with the current popularity of vocational programs? I mean, you talk to any high school, anybody's in connection with curriculum, and right. They're all in the same boat we are. We want to increase our vocational training.
Right.
Non-4-year college.
Yeah. And maybe Kathy can talk a little bit more to that. Not only is she secondary, but she's a CTE person. So
yeah, I get all those licenses. So that's why we are fortunate to have 2 ag teachers. Our ag teachers can teach almost all of the IT coursework, whereas our IT teachers cannot teach the same number of courses that our ag teachers can teach. There's a couple of differences, and so we have waivers for those that are kind of outlier courses, and MDE has been very good about granting those. We also have one of our middle school teachers is working on one of the new CTE licensures, career and tech ed, under the Project Lead the Way piece as well as STEM. So Winona offers a STEM certificate that it doesn't necessarily cover industrial tech, but it covers some other programming, robotics, that kind of piece. And Owatonna is running a cohort of teachers through that right now. So
the other thing, Neil, with and Jim will touch on this in a few minutes here, the licensure piece. We have this new tiered licensure program, and it really provides us opportunities at the Tier 1 level to hire maybe somebody who's not school trained in the tech world, but has a life background in it, so which provides us a bit more flexibility.
Yep. Mike's actually obviously right. That's one of the things the state, I think, did get right this time with the new licensure system, is looking at that tiered license where you can use somebody outside of the education world in a licensed capacity, and we'll talk about that. But that's in response to things like this, you know. So
The first thing that pops in my head relative to that is compensation. Are these non-licensed teachers going to be paid less than a very qualified non-licensed or person who has a wealth of experience in it?
two different questions there. One, they will be licensed because they'll have a Tier 1 license, but the Tier 1 folks are not members of the bargaining unit. So it's going to be up to the individual districts as to how that compensation happens. Yeah, some will follow the salary schedule just because that will be the easiest way to do it. But I know many of them that I've talked to in the metro area, especially in the area of technology, industrial tech, that sort of thing, computers, they anticipate that you could see higher salaries for Tier 1 licensed teachers because they're in such demand and to get good ones. So. Right. So just some numbers there to give kind of set the stage for that. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to review. I went over this with the three newest board members when we did that orientation, and they said this was really good to know. So just to kind of give an overview, I'll go as fast as you let me on this. If you have a question, please let me know. But it gives you a timeline of the staffing process. Really starts in February as Lori starts to pull a financial projection together, and based upon that projection, we set FTEs. Then myself and Angela, we begin to roll all the student numbers forward, the ones that we have on that day that we do it. So again, this is more of a not an exact science because that's going to change. The number of students is going to change as the months go on, but that's what we do. And then we wait for kindergarten roundup. And when that's done, then we've created a spreadsheet which basically gives a mathematical target based upon target class sizes as to how many classroom sections we need to have, how many minutes of instruction for Phi-Ed, music, and art. So again, that's just a mathematical computation. But one of the things we ask for then is we ask for how many self-contained kiddos do you have? How many ELL students are there? How many special ed students that may be in the classroom part of the time? Title, intervention. We try to look at all of those pieces. And then we begin conversations. Mary Jo and I will sit down with the building principals in the elementary, and we start to hash out what all those numbers really mean. And try to justify if justification needs to happen, either to increase or decrease the number of classrooms in the elementary and why that is. And that probably takes 3 or 4 meetings, something like that, with the principals, some very good discussion. At the same time, Kathy and I will begin to meet with the secondary principals as they go through the registration process. And again, we give them a target FTEs based upon strict numbers. And then we go from there, and as registration happens, we modify as we need to, depending upon the schedule, or if there's an increase in students or decrease in students. So once all that's done and we meet multiple times, that we get a document that we put together, and it basically plugs everybody in a spot and sets the number of FTEs as we see it. And after much discussion, then we propose that to Mike and say, here's what we think. Here's why we think it. Here's our justification. Here's what we believe is a good team in second grade at Halverson, all those sorts of things. And so, and then he often has a few questions for us, but for the most part, that's the final step before we then go to the whole idea of, do we have any continuing contract teachers that need to be put on ULA because of staffing, or is there any non-renews of probationary teachers? And then that process happens, and hopefully by the April board meeting, we're coming to you with those names. So once that happens, you approve it, then the principals go back and talk to the affected employees, and we go from there. And then we find out, oftentimes, like every other year, we find out then how many dollars we actually get from the legislature. So if you tell somebody this outside of the school realm, they go, what? The last thing you know is that how many dollars you get? Yep, everything else happens prior to that. So that's a summary of how we do staffing, and I think it's pretty typical in most districts. Many of them will hedge ahead of time and kind of estimate what they think they'll have for dollars. We've taken a fairly conservative approach to make sure we have them. So. And then that brings up the two pieces that is sometimes confusing for folks, and that is the difference between probationary and continuing contract teachers and what happens if you do need to let them go. Just a quick review there with the contract language. Probationary teachers are those that don't have continuing contract status, which requires 3 years in the same district, consecutive years in the same district. And then probationary teachers are those that don't have continuing contract status. And they're treated differently. One's called a non-renew, one's called a leave of absence, because the continuing contract teachers, under the current contract, there's a way in which you put them on unrequested leave and that you bring them back if there's a position open. Statute basically says for non-renews, you can tell them that they're done with you. And that's pretty much it. So, because they don't have that. So, some of our focus areas that we're looking at on the HR side of things is that whole idea of recruitment and retention. I was reading an article not too long ago. You know, some of the schools in the South are county schools, so they're humongous. But there were some schools that were 100, 200 teachers short with like 2 weeks before the school year started. We aren't like that. We are 100% filled, although we do have a couple of speech and language folks that are contract, that aren't members of the bargaining unit. But that doesn't mean we can't do better. And so there's a number of things we're trying to do, not only to bring people here, but to keep them. Education fairs is a common thing that people go to. You get your name out there. I think it's exposure. Metro schools do a lot better. They'll have extremely long lines at some of these. Ours is more about being seen. And sometimes you get somebody that wants to be in the outstate, and they'll come and talk to you. So we continue to do that, but focus on what, because time's precious for administrators to go to these things. So we want to make sure we're going and we're getting our money's worth. We do a really good job of helping. Heidi does an amazing job of helping people get licensed and stay licensed. And it doesn't seem like much, but if you talk to people that are in other districts, they'll say, you do what at that level to help people? I mean, she reminds them, she helps them get their paperwork done, tells them what they need. Just little things like that. An increased marketing of the community and of the school, help people feel more a part of it. This year, we have mentor-mentee for teachers. We gave them a little grab bag with a water bottle and things like that to help them connect. I think all schools are talking to universities and saying, if you got any student teachers, we'll take them. Because if you get them in the door and they student teach here, oftentimes, like myself, I student taught in Albert Lee and never left. If something's open, it feels comfortable, and if you do well, they want you back. It's a good way to pull people in that way. We always look at contract language and that's one of the things in public professions that's a big selling point is what you have in the contract. There's security there. There's always really good benefits, and I think those are the things that we continue to look at in the contract. One of the things we always talk about with teachers is we want language that advances the idea of professionalism, that you feel and are treated as a professional contractually. Some of the other things that we're trying to do is to focus more on the employee of informing them, making them more aware of their benefits and what they do. We've had an employees newsletter, some of that stuff. And then we have other things out there that I think are a big plus. Our Well at Work clinic for employees, I think, is huge. One of the things many schools are looking at is the idea of childcare for the school's employees. That's an idea that's out there. But when I talk to new teachers, you know, I always ask them, how many of you found a place to live in town? There's always going to be a couple of hands that say, I couldn't find anything in that slot. And I know Mike's had discussions with the cities, and they've made some advancements in finding some of that slot housing. But in the past, that's been an issue. As far as bringing people into the community, as opposed to driving from Owatonna or Austin or St. Peter or Lakeville, or we have them drive from all over. But one of them, I think, as far as holding them here, especially our younger one, has been our location and social life. We hear that quite often from younger teachers, especially female. I get back to the metro area, or I got engaged, and you know, whatever. Matter of fact, I was looking at our exit surveys, and I pulled this up, and I showed Mike yesterday. Just go to the next slide. And this was our very first exit survey in 2013. Not everybody gives comments. I think we've had like 70 people take the survey in the last 5 years, and that's custodians, paras, anybody who's retired has the opportunity to do that. Not all of them do. It's probably I don't know what percentage, but and the last one I pulled was the very last exit survey that I got. So you can see that there's the same kind of themes about getting closer to family or being closer to more things. I just thought it was kind of interesting when I looked that up. So, next slide. And then once staffing's all done and we're in that process, the next thing that happens is evaluation of staff. And so I won't spend a lot of time on here. There's some links here on the plans that we do and the teacher improvement plan. But one of the things that's changed over the last 4 or 5 years that I think makes us better evaluators, and in the end, gives us a teacher who feels more prepared when we do good evaluations, is that in the statute, when it was changed a few years ago, talks about the process of teacher improvement and talks about the kind of resources that you are required then to help them with if they're not meeting standard. And then the last thing it says out of one of those must-dos is that if they don't make improvement, you must discipline the teacher. That was never in the statute before. And again, it sounds harsh, but I think what it does is if we're going to do that, then we're going to make sure we have really good improvement plans that are focused on what improvement needs to happen, right? So I think, you know, that's sort of the message there. But I think we have a pretty healthy teacher evaluation plan, and we're looking at making some changes to that going forward to make it better. Negotiations is another big area, especially coming up in the next year. We only had one bargaining unit up for negotiations. That was the support staff. They're off cycle. But next year for the 1920 contract year, 1921 bargaining unit contract, we're going to have 9 of them up. And so again, this is just a review of the things that we do as far as the negotiation process. But I think what I'd like to point out is, you know, the biggest thing is we sit down with the bargaining unit, we try to make it somewhat of a partnership as much as you can, coming up with guidelines on how we're going to operate, you know, what some of those, that first meeting is setting the ground rules, saying here's what the district's priorities are, what are yours, so we have that conversation going. And that first meeting, Lori always explains baseline, so we know exactly where we're starting from, and if we're adding on 2%, we're adding on 2% to what. So we go through all that. And then as we go through the process, we always look at internal and external comps for pay and benefits. And as we go through that process, we use a sheet that we call the summary of negotiations that sits side by side. And I know I've given you a snippet of some of those in the past, but sometimes they can be 10, 12 pages long as we look at individual contract language. And there's a link there, but we won't go there. What I would, Ashley, if you would click on actual settlement data. So this gives you a little bit of historical background and gives you an idea of the dollar amounts when we talk about, 4%. What does that mean in each bargaining unit based on the number of people they have and what they already make? But this is the last 4 years, 15, 16, yep. Last 4 years, what the overall percent was for that year and the actual dollar amount of the settlement. Lori, anything you'd want to add there at all?
Just want to make the comment that it's important to realize the cost of employment contracts and why the state funding formula is so important, because we need that gen ed formula and other funding streams such as special ed funding, et cetera, be improving and increasing, because we're a service organization, so over 80% of our costs in the general fund are for people. And an inflationary level, you can see it ranges from 1.2 million to 1.4, depending on the year and depending on what's happening with health insurance renewals and what also is happening with when you compare comps. We want to pay our employees equitably and be competitive in the marketplace. It does cost money, and that is why we need the state to be paying us adequately so that we keep on track with a balanced budget of revenue and expense.
Thanks. Okay, go back. Okay, tiered licensure, you may have heard about this, but real briefly, basically what happened is the state statute changed the way we license teachers, and it consolidated 2 organizations that were doing license stuff, the Board of Teaching and MDE Licensing Division, plugged them into one thing called PELSB, the Professional Educators Licensing and Standard Board. So that'll be the new term that everybody uses now. They talk about PELSB, which used to be the Board of Teaching. So basically, they've lumped them all together, and they've tried to simplify how we license teachers into 4 tiers. And really, tiers 3, and think of it this way, tiers 3 and 4 are your regular licensed teachers, 5-year teaching license kind of folks. And tiers 1 and 2 are people who aren't quite there yet, but they're giving them a license. We used to call them waivers and variances and special permissions and all that sort of thing. There's a little bit of that left, which I'm not going to get into, but for the most part, that's kind of the division between the 4 tiers. So, next slide. So, you can't read it, but this is actually from Ed Minnesota's page, and it talks about the requirements of the 4 tiers and what that is. So, for instance, Neil, to your question, Tier 1 is really for those people that have a real expertise, possibly in a CTE area, or they have a bachelor's degree, or both. But literally, you can get a Tier 1 license and have an associate degree and get a teacher. Now, those are short-term licenses. It's not like you've got a 5-year license that you can renew. There are things that you'll have to work towards in order to keep moving up before you run out of Tier 1 licenses, but it gives some flexibility there. Tier 2 is very similar, but you have a bachelor's degree that you've gone through a teacher's licensing program, or you have a master's degree. And so it gets kind of complicated, and you have to pull these all apart when someone comes in and says, yep, we want to hire them. A principal will call Heidi and myself and say, I want to hire them, but here's what they got. Can they qualify for a license? And then we have to walk through this and probably call PELSB and say, this is what we got. Is this a tier? Because every one of these has their own license application, right? So you have to know which one. Tier 1s actually have to go before the board and be approved. They actually look at each one of them. So they all have their own different requirements. 3 and 4 are much more your regular teaching license. Oftentimes, Tier 3, they're missing something. Maybe they didn't pass a test, whatever, and so they get a Tier 3 license. And Tier 4 are those people that have completed everything, passed all their tests, and are ready to go as a teacher. So it breaks it into 4 tiers, makes it a little bit simpler, I hope. So focus areas for HR for this year, like I talked about negotiations, there's 2 big things that have come up in the last couple of years. One is a Minnesota state law, which now says that the board or the school district and the bargaining unit needs to discuss the ULA language as opposed to saying ULA language is strictly on seniority. So that'll be something that will be an issue to work through as to how we would lay off teachers if that need be, what that process looks like. And there's a lot of districts trying to do different things. Many of them have seniority language already in their contract and they're going to stay that way. Other ones are looking at other caveats to that or changing the model altogether. But that'll be an interesting thing to watch throughout the state of Minnesota this next year. The other one is the effects of the Supreme Court ruling on the Janus case, which in the past compelled people who did not want to be part of a bargaining unit, a union, to pay a fair share to be represented by the bargaining unit, and that was struck down. So therefore, anybody who doesn't want to be a member of a bargaining unit or a union would not pay their fair share, yet the bargaining unit still bargains for them. But we're still seeing how all that's going to shake out over the course of the next year and how that will affect us in Minnesota is still to be determined yet, I think. So tiered licensing will continue to be an issue as we work through it and learn more about it, especially in light of somewhat of a teacher shortage in some areas. Another issue that has really gotten some traction in the last number of years in the state and all over the country is the new term called presenteeism, how much people are here as opposed to how much they're not. I'm not sure why that happened, but even in my HR group, there's a organization started called Presenteeism. You can find it presenteeism.org, and it's directly related to educators' attendance. And I think we just need to take a look at we have data, but I think we need to take a hard look at data and say, is it an issue, yes or no? And if it is, why? And what are the reasons for that? So it's just something we want to take a look at. And then recruitment and retention will be one of those ongoing issues. So, all right, the other hat's technology.
Just hold on 1 second. I want to see if anyone has any questions or comments.
How many variances do we have this year?
I can't give you the exact number. I'd have to...
More or less than last year?
More.
Okay.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say they're variances. They're more like Tier 1 or Tier 2 licenses. Some of those are because people were licensed in Iowa or they had a different license and now we have to get them something else. That's a lot of them. And then we had a fair number, 4 or 5 folks that did not have any license of any kind because they were in summer school and finishing or something like that, we're still working the license issue with them. So I can get you the exact number of those that aren't basically a Tier 4, but I have to check with Heidi. It's been a busy summer with that. Okay, anything else on?
Just a comment. I agree with your comment that we need to be competitive, and I think that from what you've talked about in the past, we've been competitive, especially from those teachers coming from Iowa. And I think that's great, and I also like the teacher evaluation because I think we owe it to our students to have the best teachers available, and I think we've gone through the instructional coaches and we've gone to other things to help everyone we can be the best teacher possible, and so I think that evaluation is another important piece of that, so thank you.
Okay. I would say the one change here to make note of is the fact that our numbers are going up as far as our one-to-one devices, and that will, I just saw 8 more boxes show up downstairs of Chromebooks, and so they will be pushed out to the elementary, and we will be one-to-one Chromebooks in grades 3 through 12 this fall. So that's the difference here. The other difference is last year, 6th grade was one-to-one, but they were cart-based. And this year, we're issuing them to kids, and 6th graders are one-to-one take-home. So they have their own Chromebook that they're responsible for.
And I just want to really commend Jim here. This is his part-time job, is the technology hat that he wears here. But, you know, I would say 5 years ago, we had probably a tenth of these devices in the district. And very deliberative about rolling out the plan and how we were going to do it and training the teachers on the front end before the devices were deployed. And so, and then the other piece is now his new challenge will be how are we managing all these moving forward?
Yeah. How often will we turn them over to new ones? What's
three
cycle?
to 4 years. The life cycle is, they say end of life is 3 years. Normally, that's a conservative number. With desktops, they'll say 4 or 5 years, and we can get 5, 6, 7 years out of some of them. But these devices, one-to-one, they don't last as long. They just don't, kind of like your phone. And so 3 to 4 years. And this provides challenges for us, definitely. The guys have to think about how they support technology. It used to be a desktop, and you got to look at things differently, and so there's some learning for us to do there, too. Next slide.
Can I ask a question, still back on that? So
Sure.
does the ALC have, can they take Chromebooks home as well?
Yes.
And then how about hotspots for them? Yeah,
Yes.
5.
Mm-hmm.
And they check it out? So they check out the Chromebooks as well, up from the 80? Thank you.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, that's been, you know, it's kind of interesting that you would think there would be a lot more to check out, but I think there's so many people that if they don't have wireless at home, they have hotspot on their phone. We bought, I think, 25, and that's it for the district. I mean, and it doesn't look like we need any more because so many kids have access at other places. Some focus areas for us, I think, is to continue to incorporate technology into the coaching model for the district, and to continue to look at digital-rich curricular things that we can use as well. And like I said, one of the challenges for us is technical support, finding out where we need to put our resources. We approved an extra tech a couple of years ago to be the mobile device manager, but you can see his job in mobile devices. So we're learning as we go, and there are some holes that we need to fill and talk about, and we're going to be meeting here soon to do that. And then the other one is outside of the one-to-one piece is, you might remember, for some of you who've been around a while, Microsoft money. You know, you probably remember the Microsoft lawsuit. We bought a whole bunch of smart boards, and those are end of life, and they're starting to fail. And so we need to have a conversation about where do we need them, do we need them, who needs them, and then, you know, so some of those related equipment pieces we need to take a hard look at this year and come up with a plan on what we're going to do, because they're aging. So anything on for me as far as technology?
Okay, we've been sitting here for an hour and a half. We probably need to take a short break, and 5 or 10 minutes, we'll look to see when everyone's back, and we'll get started again.
All right. Well, this is just an overview of actually both Kathy and I. I elementary, as you know, and her secondary, and just a list of kind of our overarching work focus. And we are moving. Thank you, Ashley. All right. And then just for elementary, my focus is obviously supporting the elementary buildings, administrators. Also work with the transitioning from pre-K programming, the K alignment. Last year we had 94% of our incoming kindergartners attend preschool. I don't know, I'm still waiting for the kindergarten data this year, so hopefully it's the same or more. Still continue to do outreach in the community, just really opening the doors, making sure people are aware of all our services, educational opportunities, et cetera. And then curriculum is really probably the majority of the time. It's the curriculum, what are we doing in our elementary schools? Dr. Funk talked earlier about fidelity. If you go in one elementary, you should be expected that it's guaranteed that we will be doing the same high level of instruction in all classrooms. And give you an example of that when we talk about the standards and our focus and aligning our work to the Minnesota standards. We had a group of elementary teachers this summer work on science curriculum. And one of the things we really worked hard on was looking at what standards in science do we excel at by grade level, and what standards do we need more work on. And so data really is driving, way back more than 15 years ago, our work on what we're doing. Is our promise to families is that we are teaching the standards to their child for that grade level. And so it's enlightening when we all sit down and look where are we doing well, where we're not, and then figuring out how do we improve. Responsive classroom still is very strong in the elementary schools. That's giving us our classroom routines, our academic languages, logical consequences, basically how we live and breathe in our buildings of social emotional curriculum. And I'll just drop down to the school counselors for a second. By adding them, it also gave another piece of very specific social emotional classroom lessons, such as bullying, how to deal with anxiety. I don't even have a list of the lessons, but you can think of the social emotional needs that kids have and how we're teaching them. And Ashley, if you would click on the first link, please. Yep. And so we asked social worker, oh shoot, it happens every time, I gotta remember that. Okay, so we can't see it, but by lesson, social workers have been doing pre-tests, and the one that I was gonna show you was calming activities of how, a lot of younger students don't know how to self-soothe or calm, and so they'll get anxiety or frustration or anger. And so the lessons that, these happen to be fourth grade lessons that I was going to show you here, was fourth grade. The school counselors gave all the fourth graders in the district a pre-assessment on how they use calming activities. And some kids, it was throwing themselves on the ground, just lay down, and different things. And so then you go through the lessons that the school counselors are providing, and then they gave post data to show that, kids are knowing, okay, I need to use a signal. There's strategies that you can use, because maybe we assume it, but kids don't have strategies to know how to function socially, with emotional needs. And so we are seeing some positive post data as we assess that kids are understanding there are things they can be doing to help themselves for their social and emotional well-being. I did ask the principals just some narrative feedback from them on data of school counselors. And Nick said something that was interesting. He said, the Lakeview office referrals haven't necessarily went down yet. But he said one thing he's noticed is if a child was really struggling in a classroom, that child was usually referred to the office or to have Nick come and talk to them at a time, set aside time, or however they worked it. And he said he doesn't have that as much anymore because now the school counselor is there for a resource where that school counselor can intervene with that child and kind of at the present time talk with that child or figure out what strategies that school counselor can help the student with. So we're seeing some positive effects with the school counselor and all the social emotional needs that the young kids have. Yeah, so we added that last year. And we didn't start the actual, it's called Second Step Curriculum, which each month it's a different focus, till October. And so this year we're more on top of it of knowing the data we need to collect and getting the pre and post data as well as office referrals, discipline referrals, et cetera, to manage that much tighter just to see the effects of school counselors. And then we have a district K-3 literacy plan that we submit annually to MDE. And then the last thing I have is just staff development. And Dr. Funk talked a little bit earlier about Paul Farmer. And we brought him into the district twice now. And the focus has been on building collaborative teams. So if you're a grade level, if you're a district grade level, a building of collaborative teams to really get to the grit of work, the grit of the important work we need to do. It's not easy. And, you know, when you talk about professional discourse, we do need to challenge each other, and some of us aren't comfortable with that. And so talking about strategies on how we work with each other, how we set non-negotiables, not only in meetings, but the non-negotiables in our curriculum. And it just, this person in the staff development really helped us move forward with things we weren't even aware of some of the strategies, PD, of things we should have been doing. So he was received very well by staff. I don't have his evaluation here, the results that staff had, but on a scale of 1 to 5, he was like a 4.8, so very well received. And all the instructional leaders in all the buildings attended a full-day session with him this fall, or, well, not fall, but August 9th. And then for PD also, you know, we have we're focusing more on reading this year. We got to see more growth here. And so we did have a trainer come in this fall as well who did phonics instruction with us. And really, teachers were like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this. And just the feedback from that was, this was what we needed. So really strong training. And then the last part of my job is, these are the grants that I work on with Lori. And so the federal grants, Title I, II, III, you know, that's based on a free and reduced population. And ADSES is a 2-year grant cycle as well. And I should say, you can see the FTEs that are funded by these positions. ADSES used to be competitive. It's no longer competitive as long as we meet the criteria that the state sets forward for the ADSES grant. And then the last big grant is the Achievement and Integration Grant. And because we're considered a racially isolated district, which means the surrounding schools around us, and it's a formula that MDE uses. So when you look at schools around us, Glenville, Alden, Southland, Lyle, there's a big disparity between the ethnic percentage of students we are serving in our school versus schools. And so Austin is racially isolated, we are racially isolated, and then we're all part of a consortium. And then the smaller schools, Lyle, Hayward, and Southland, to get incentive dollars or integration dollars, they have to participate in some of our programming. And so you may have heard about our EQ program, which it's for 4th, 5th, and 6th graders who go to Austin once a month, and it's the E stands for Environment, Engineering. I'm going to forget the last one. But feedback on that from parents is it's a great program for their kids. It's enrichment, and it's all those districts partake in it. And then in the summer, it's also a 20-day summer program. And so great learning in that. And this grant is also where we fund our success coaches. And Angie, your comment earlier, just the good news for the district is we used to not know if we were getting access before, and what's there one? Oh, the Comp Pilot. And now those grants are we getting them or not? So now we know our funding source. Any questions?
So the EQ is part of the Achievement and Integration Grant?
Yes.
Okay.
We are required under that grant to do an integration activity with the schools in our consortium, and so all of these schools participate in E-Cubed.
And start the timer. So these are just our secondary admin staff, relatively the same as last year, just moved around a little bit. So I support those staff, and then I am also the DAC, so the District Assessment Coordinator with MCAs, MTAS, Access, ACT, AP. We also were chosen again this year to give the NAEP test to a random group of 8th graders reading and math, and I believe it's going to be in February. So Carrie McDermott is working through that. So this is about 2 years ago we did it. So this is the new MMR. It's called North Star Reporting, and I want to just acknowledge Sarah over here came and visited with us yesterday and tried to work through this with the newspaper, and so tried to put something together to help us understand what this new reporting is. And I want to correct a little bit my numbers here from earlier. So we projected about 4,400 tests, MCAs, to be taken, MCAs and MTAS. We, in the spring, had preliminary results of 3,810, and the state has published for us on their website now 3,736. So that's really a differential of about 693 tests. They have all kinds of rules and regulations, so about 70 of those tests got kicked out for a wide variety of reasons. Student took the wrong test, student refused to, student started a test, didn't finish, student left the district, student came into the district, medical reason, et cetera. So lots of reasons. And as we start talking about these accountability test scores, they take about a 2-week window. And any student who's enrolled in the district during those 2 weeks, they count. Now, all the tests count that we give, but if they weren't enrolled, so if they came before that 2-week window and took the test, they don't count. And if they left, they don't count in this accountability window. And that's been going on for years, so that's nothing new. And the science tests are not in the accountability at all. So science don't count towards our these North Star rating. And so we should have given 802 science tests, and we gave 616. So we had 186 kids opt out of science testing. And that's all the way through our ALC, because we know some of our ALC kiddos still take the tests as well. We estimated 200 kids. We had documentation 200 kids didn't take the reading K-12, but only 161 were during the accountability window, and then 233 math, and 180 of those were in the accountability window. So it skewed my results a little bit. So if I'm talking about just the high school, we had a 54% grade 11 did not take the test, so 134 out of 250. Grade 10, 36% did not take the test, so 93 out of 259. And grade 8, and these numbers are up a little bit from previous years, 64 or 22% of our 280 8th graders did not take tests. So I'll just, sure, 22%, so 64 out of 280. And so that was a high number. We actually started with only 55, but then we had, Johnny didn't take it, so they came to the next test and didn't take the reading, but they may have taken the math. And So we ask for parent signature on those, but then we do have some students who come and just say, I'm not going to test. And we offer it 3 times. And so those are student refusals. So Heidi goes in and hand enters all of those refusals. And then the numbers now that are on the website are those kind of final numbers. So,
Kathy, do you think that the numbers are increasing because people are more aware of it? And that's the reason why more of them are opting out?
Absolutely. It's been, I think it's been pretty public around in this community, in particular on Facebook and then, other places where people post this is, and so we're in that double bind. The feds say and the state says you have to give them that option. And then, then everybody who doesn't test is going to count against you in one of these stage scores.
So if I'm a student and I'm college bound and I take the ACT, I may just decide, you know what, MCA is just another thing that doesn't count. I'm going to opt out.
Yep.
So you could lose a bunch of good testing students.
So we and our teachers want the tests as late in the year as possible. So we try to move that MCA, the math one for grade 11 and the reading and the science as late as possible. For a couple of years, the ACT was April 19th. This year it was April 3rd or 4th. So now that that's pushed up, so the ACT is later, well then they take their AP exams and, if they're taking 2 of those, MCs, as a junior, which is not as important. So what is the new reporting? So academic achievement is exactly the same as it has been in the past. So that doesn't change, except that our school and Halverson is the one school that was taken a look at here as needing support. It isn't last year's score, it's a 3-year average of scores. So it's a lot more data than we've had before. So yes, we can see the 2018 proficiency, and you'll see all of this in a couple of weeks. But for a school to be targeted for academic achievement, they had to hit the threshold, be around the threshold of the lowest 5% in the state of title schools. So we have thresholds, we have badges, we have awards, they're trying to be a little more positive and take a look at, so Jim talked about presenteeism. This year we have consistent attendance instead of chronic absenteeism. So it's kind of some new things in here to focus on the positives. So reading achievement, math achievement, we can see last year's, and then we can see a trend, but what counts as a 3-year average. And so that's new this year. We have never counted access proficiency, which is the test for our EL students. This is new. Obviously we looked at it, we use it. It's how students receive EL services, how much services they should get. That now counts towards and we don't have an overall score. We get indices and we get percentages, but there is no overall rating of schools. So we're doing pretty well in our progress towards English language proficiency, but this is new. So every student, based on their initial access test, MDE will derive a target for them. And then when they take that access test at the end of the year, if they hit that target, that's obviously good. But if they don't, then that impacts our percentage of students who hit their target. And I will tell you, I've not seen any data on how they determine that target yet. So that's still to be determined. If you have a school, which Southwest, for instance, has less than 20 EL students, they have 16, so their numbers don't count at all. They're a cell size too small to report if they're less than 20. So you won't be able to see those on the public reporting. So that's stage 1. Stage 2 now is new. This used to be growth. It's now called academic progress. And every student in reading and math gets a progress score based on how well they did last year and how well they progressed this year. So if they went up a level, they get more points. If they just stayed the same, they get less points. If they didn't test, or they're in those lowest 2 ranges, they get 0 points. So all the kids who met or exceed get points and go on the numerator. Everybody else who didn't test, they all go in the denominator. And so there's a state progress score. I know, Ken, you're looking at me in disbelief. And you get a score based on that. The data is really pretty good, the individual building data, which we got last week, where principals can take a look at, okay, who's moving, who's progressing, who are kids who are achieving levels. That's good data. I'm not so sure the score is, but it's there. So that's the one as a district. As I said, 400 and some kiddos are in our denominator because they exercise their right to refuse to test. So graduation rates, we now, yeah, go
Just a
ahead.
question.
Yep.
From what I understand, if you compare Austin and Owatonna, they don't have the number of students opting out of the tests that we have.
Correct. And I'm going to bring you all that data of who is and isn't, what do our numbers look like. Our graduation rates, we're doing very well overall, and we're above the state threshold. Except for our ALC, we're like every other ALC in the state. We're not at 67% graduation rate for our ALC. We were at 50% overall for that 4-year rate. So because the ALC is below the 67% in this 3-year average, they are targeted for comprehensive support. And because the high school, over 3 years, they're above 67% except for our special education group. They're at 62.4% over 3 years, but they were at 66.67% this last year, so their trend is upwards. They still are targeted for comprehensive support. So Mary Jo and I and Johanna Thomas and Mark Grossglass will be meeting with the Regional Centers for Excellence about, we have to write a plan for that. We kind of already know what we're going to do and some good things, but so it's a 3-year average now. It's not your 2018 data. And then consistent attendance, percentage of students attending more than 90% of the enrolled days, and we're doing very well there. I'm not going to read this to you, but this is the first spreadsheet we got on data, and this last column here is consistent attendance, and you see there's only one red box. So these are all the schools, all the new subpopulation groups that they have identified. We have really good attendance here. As a matter of fact, we have a couple schools that are in the top 5% for a couple of different groups. So that's a good thing. We know we have kids coming to school. So that's the new North Star reporting. It's not a rating. This replaces MMR, which replaced AYP under ESSA. And we're going to have bingo afterwards for all of those things. So updates, just a couple of things to note. Last year we added ELA and math at the 6th grade, an extra semester. This year we're changing it up a little bit in that instead of kids having reading and math every other day, they'll have an extra semester of reading, an extra semester of math, partly because our writing and math teachers were seeing every student all year long, so 270 students, and so they're going to try this a little bit different, similar to what we're doing with health and PE. We have 2 licensed ALC instructors for grades 6 and 7, so we're working on that school within a school program. We're streamlining our electives. Last year was our first year at looking at some new electives. A new piece this year is we are adding Laura Pillman. Laura Wangen is a 7th grade English language arts teacher. She also has a K-12 reading license. So she's going to be working 1 hour a day with our EL students, providing direct reading support for our EL students in addition to our EL teacher. And then she'll spend another hour providing other supports for our EL students. So we're excited about adding that content area for our EL students. And John Double is going to be working with our Tiger Plus and career awareness speakers at Southwest. Grade 8, we are in our 2nd year of offering a summer school math credit to our 8th graders going into 9th grade, who need some extra work in that area. Continuing with Top 20, we're working with our Pathways elective. John Double is working on our 912 CTE work, collaborating with Jean Eaton and the community partnerships to build this Pathways model. I know that he's met with a couple community organizations with Gene. Mayo Clinic's going to be doing a couple-hour event for our seniors who are interested in that career. So John will be here in a couple of weeks to also talk about that. Our Area Learning Center, we are fully staffed with fully licensed teachers in all 4 core areas, which we've struggled with the last couple of years. So we have licensed, all of our teachers are licensed, and we're looking at expanding our opportunities for work-based learning for those students. These are our key issues. We continue to work on standards alignment like the elementary, strategies to keep students on track for graduation. We have 2 instructional coaches at the high school this year for the first time, in a little bit different roles, Therese Netzer and Sean Gaston and Jill Nelson at Southwest, and then John working on our career pathways and community opportunities. Curriculum review, again, something Mary Jo and I work on together, just kind of the state of standards. You'll see that art and music are close to being fully revised this June. The legislature has not determined an implementation date yet, but those are in review. K-12 science is in review this year. And health and PE standards are now done. I should say it's mostly PE, but we lump health and PE together. And so by 2021, 2022, we'll be implementing the new PE and health standards. So those are the 3 areas in review this next few years. And Alice, do you want to talk about
Questions or comments?
Go ahead.
Okay. As far as the MCAs, are there any incentives that we can offer, or how do we frame this for the students as far as how it might benefit them, if at all?
Yeah, so one of the things we tried last year was to talk about the opportunity to take, if you did really well on your 10th grade and 11th grade MCAs, you wouldn't have to take the AccuPlacer to take college in the schools courses or even some early middle college courses. Unfortunately, the registration happens in the spring and official results don't come out till August 30th. So we're 2 weeks into school. So again, that was an incentive the legislature put on school districts, and we sent letters home and tried to promote that with our 8th graders as well. If they did well, they could take some CTE courses through Riverland as sophomores. Yeah, we talk about incentives. It's one of the things I know Mankato has really talked with their community about is this is really important, and this shows you how well we're teaching to the standards. So
that's what I was going to say. It's obviously elementary. It's easier to have students do, but I've been asked by parents in elementary, is it worth it? And I said, absolutely. And if I had the choice to my kids to opt out or not, I would not. I want to know where are my kids at, because it is preparing, and it shows me where my kids are at. It compares them to the rest of the kids in the state, so I know, oh, these are the things I need to work on at home. So, or the school needs to work on. So, I think for elementary, it's a given of it's pretty valuable information for us.
It seems like it'd be an opportunity for PR. Also, so in secondary, how about mental health and social emotional support?
Sure. So we are on year 2 of the Tiger Pride Top 20 course for all 8th graders. We also continue. We have still 3 full-time counselors at the high school and 2.5 school social workers. 2.7. And we have 2 deans still. So we have a lot of support staff in the office. They're working on looking at a newer, quicker referral system. We've talked at Cabinet about problem-solving teams and how can we improve upon that. So the high school is also taking a look at that. Just a real simple thing that Mark has talked with staff about is an easier pass system. So how easy can it be for a student to get to the office to see somebody they're looking at an electronic version of that using the Chromebook. So it isn't, you can put something in and then the teacher can approve that, and you can be on your way without a lot of disruption of the classroom if need be. So.
Kathy, Southwest did developmental design.
Yes, so Southwest this year brought in developmental design kind of at the last minute, but it's something they've been talking about with Steve Kovach, and that's the secondary version of responsive classroom. So, and then we had day one of the No Bully training, and we're moving on to training our leadership teams. I think that was very well received by our secondary staff. It was some very simple methods for helping. Everybody can help every student and the climate in the school, but then the next step will be training the leadership team to help respond. So, well received.
Okay, thank you. Now, Alice training.
Just, you want to touch base on elementary? Yeah, principals fill you in much what they're doing with that. I'm not scared. I'm prepared.
Yep. And it's a read-aloud book that teachers would do in the classroom, and it gives strategies, but it's through kind of the animals. So the characters are an ant, and I don't remember who all the characters are, but talks about an emergency that strategies of what basically Alice is and what you do, and then they have activities that go with it. And so in elementary, we've paced out throughout the year of we'll be doing the book probably in the next couple weeks, and then there's some activities that will follow. And so each elementary building has made a pacing of how we're implementing Alice and then the drills that we'll have. Interesting too, note, since we're talking Alice, is, families when they register, when they're new to the district, come to district office here. And when Angela was registering a family, she came to me and said, this family has some questions. Would you come and help me with them? And so we went, and one of the family's questions was, what is your emergency preparedness, i.e. active shooter type training and things? And so I explained what we've done, and they're like, oh, great. We feel better that you sound like you're proactive and very aware that things could be a reality. So that was an interesting comment from an incoming family moving to Albert Lea.
So in the interest of time, we won't show the video, but I would encourage a couple of the board members who weren't at the back to school thing to watch that. You can click on it on the link that Ashley sent you. It's a video that our high school staff put together on a Alice type situation at Albert Lea High School. And Mary Jo mentioned drills. Starting in September, we will be doing drills at different levels throughout the district, ongoing with these protocols.
We also did the training with the support staff this year. So all the paraeducators were trained.
So you also applied for a grant also from the state of Minnesota?
Yes, we did. Yep. And so it's a $500,000 grant. Actually, we applied for it in a couple of different locations in the district. So it's a competitive grant, and we will hear, October sometime in the time frame for that. So we'll see what happens with that.
Is that it for Alice training? Okay. And finally, Tammy.
Yeah, the best for last, right? So Dr. Funk had a number up earlier that showed, I think, 645. I just counted today, and we actually have 718 special ed students in our district. I think part of the reason is we have had a lot of move-ins this summer where students are on IEPs. We also have several students in the early childhood. We're starting the year out, early childhood special ed, with 107 students, which is higher than we've been in several years. So we're doing well on Child Find, that's for sure. So this is the staff that I'm responsible for in our district, and just want to point out that speech right now, we have a real live person at the high school and at every elementary. Right now at Southwest, we have teletherapy for speech therapy. We're also moving to that at Hawthorne Elementary because we needed another speech person in early childhood, and we're moving Connie Meyer back there, and she was in agreement with that. So The teletherapy seems to be working out really well, especially at the middle school level. The reason I chose Hawthorne is because they don't have any special programming, and they had it last year when Connie was on FLMA, and the students seemed to do well with it. So we also have a part-time teletherapist at the high school. So that's the different staff numbers that we have in the district. Right now we're at 55 special ed teachers, and then we have lead teachers in every building. And at the high school we have 2, as well as Tammy Willis, who's our coordinator there. You want to go there it is, okay. Right now we still have students at the Austin Albert Lee Co-op, and I'll talk about numbers there in a minute. Those are just the different programs that I deal with. So this year our 18 to 21 transition program here at Brookside consists of 5 students. They're all boys this year. Last year we had all girls, so that's always interesting. That's a program we really need to grow in, and so we're really encouraging the high school staff to talk to parents about our 18 to 21 program for our more disabled students and what that program does for those kids, learning about individualized or independent living, thinking about cooking. Lori does a nice job with that. Those students also are providing a coffee service for the staff in this building, so every day they come by and sell their coffee to us. Homeless liaison, right now, as Dr. Funk said earlier, we have 13 students that are currently on our homeless list. That changes on a regular basis. A lot of our move-ins are people coming to the community. And homeless can mean anything from living with a grandparent to couch surfing with some of our high school kids who might have gotten kicked out of their home. Care and treatment, right now that means students that are usually sent to some type of residential facility due to some of their mental health concerns. We have approximately 10 students. We even have one that's housed out in Utah right now because that was the only place that would accept him. Third-party billing, we've moved Julie Stoneking to full-time just because the requirements of that have increased from the DHS department, and so we're constantly working on time studies with the people that are providing those services to our students. Right now we have 2 students at St. Theodore's, which is really low. We've had a lot more in the past, but those are speech students. And Hollandale's got 4. And then Kathy talked a little bit about the MTAS testing, and that is the replacement for the MCA for our very severe students, usually our functional skills level, or some of our ASD students. Probably the most difficult piece this year for me has been the staffing. I spent most of my summer looking for staff. For one of our speech pathologists, I even bought out the contract from a contract company, and she's with us this year. I believe we have 4 or 5 special ed students that are on the Tier 1 this year. However, a lot of the students that have been in the past are, I think last year I had 100% of the students on, or the teachers on variance license working on their special ed licensure. So that's exciting to hear that they like it and they want to stay. So that's a good thing for our district. We are actually in an MDE compliance and corrective action plan year. It's a 6-year cycle. We are in year 4, which is a corrective action year, which means there's some work for our team to do. We'll be checking different paperwork throughout the school year, and any incorrections or noncompliance issues we find will be repaired and then sent on to MDE. We have the next 2 years free, so we won't have to worry about any MDE people coming to visit us. Last year, Lori helped me a great deal working on the Uniform Grant Guidance Manual, and that is the manual that just takes a look at the procurement and procedure process for purchases. Taking care of some of the probationary, non-probationary teacher evals. There's a lot of special ed teachers up for eval this year. Take care of tuition billing, fiscal monitoring. That's where MD comes every 5 years and checks, makes sure we're using our money correctly. So any purchase that is made with special ed money has to relate back to the child's IEP. So we have forms that teachers have to complete when they want any type of equipment or curriculum, and they have to search through children's IEPs to find out where this material is going to be used or who it's going to be used for. So they're very, very strict on the monies that we can spend in special ed. Let's see. I attend a lot of the, we have MDE director forums at MDE probably 4 times a year, and then the Region 10 directors meet monthly. So those keep me busy as well. So I think one of our biggest successes has been the co-op. This year we have I just talked to Amy Schultz. She's our new principal there this year, and I just talked to her. Right now Albert Lee has about 15 students there. That's mixed up, sorry. Austin has 28, Albert Lee has about 15. We have been transitioning some of our students back from the co-op, and most of those have been successful. We tend to transition them back into our level 3 programs before we put them more into the mainstream classes, just to get them comfortable with that small group setting and then gradually move them out into the mainstream setting. And like I said before, the biggest challenge, like I said, has been the teacher shortage in special ed. And I guess I have 3 new Tier 1 teachers this year, so. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. It looked like about 20% of our students are in special ed and about
Yes.
20% of our teachers. Is that typical for a school district, or is that high? Or?
We're a little high compared to the state average. Not sure why, but we just get a lot of move-ins that our kids are on IEPs.
Because we're a regional center, and so a lot of the smaller towns around us might not be able to provide some of the services, so then they come here.
Do some come from Iowa also?
We did have one from Iowa last year who was living in Iowa and was tuitioned in, and the family was actually paying the tuition, but right now I don't think we have any.
Any other questions anyone has or comments?
Just one announcement. Again, the Education Foundation is sponsoring a teacher recognition get-together at the Cove on the 13th of September, and Superintendent Funk, I believe Ken, you and I are on a panel at 4:30, so you wouldn't want to miss that. If you are interested, check it out by Googling the Albert Lee Education Foundation, because they would appreciate reservations being sent to a post office address. That's Google the Albert Lee Education Foundation. They have a really nice website, everything you need to know. It's in conjunction with, I forget the name of the program, it's every year for the last 10 years or so, alumni have been
Distinguished
recognized.
alumni.
Distinguished alumni, thank you. And they will, I believe, on the afternoon of that day, be presenting to the student body at the high school. And, excuse me, and Manny Style, who is very aggressive in promoting things, has introduced a new recognition for former teachers of our district, a sort of Hall of Fame for teachers. And there are 10 who are going to be inducted this the 13th, whatever day that is. So that's coming up.
So there is a meal and then the awards following that for both the...
Yeah, it starts at, there's a reception, a social gathering at about 4:15, I think, and then the panel is at 4:30, and I think there's a banquet at 6:30.
Okay, anything else that should come before the board at this time? Okay, thank you, staff, for the presentations. I always think it's important that we get updated and where we've been, where we're going, and so I thank you for that. And if any board members have recommendations in the future, please let me know. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, the motion is made. Is there a second? Second. Meeting is adjourned.